because you got to remember, at home, I had violent touch. There, I had another kind of violating touch that I didn't understand because I was little. Um,
You don't
so
understand
I,
sex at that age, do you? So
right,
Right.
no. And so there was a lot of shame. I can label it as that way now because I'm an adult and I understand it better. But there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of just, what is this? um, and like with a lot of, survivors of assault, molestation, sexual abuse, you think, oh, well, every once in a while it feels good. So I'm a participant. I must have been aware and liked it and wanted it somehow. So, I'm a part of this. Like I am wrong somehow. Um, so there was that element to it too.
hi everyone, welcome back. This is the final part of my interview with Mike and Brittany, and specifically the second part of the conversation I had with Brittany, focusing on her experiences. Again, there are some trigger warnings here as we do talk about sexual abuse, as well as Brittany's experiences with guilt and shame and trying to unravel those emotions through therapy as she grew throughout her life. I must commend her for her honesty and bravery in speaking about these things. She spoke candidly and honestly, and although I didn't know her so well at the time, I must say I was incredibly proud of her for the way she spoke about it and was honest with me. Unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people who have been through something similar, and if you're affected in any way, I urge you to seek help from a professional or perhaps even just speak to a friend and let them know that you're hurting. I don't want to say too much more. I urge you to listen to the conversation. It's real and honest and vulnerable, as I said. And I think it's more of these conversations that we need to have. Once again, if you have something similar or a similar experience that you'd like to come and share, or any experience with mental health difficulties and trauma from your childhood, I ask you to reach out via the links in the comments, the video description, or via my website. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
You talked about sensing danger or threat. My guess is that you probably sense danger and threat in men in particular, because you would recognize certain patterns or body language in your father. I think I'm very good at spotting manipulative, narcissistic traits in people when they're trying to take advantage of me or of other people. I'm very aware of that simply because of my experience. Mike, I'm not sure how I'd relate that to you, but it takes one to
Oh,
know one is my
no,
point.
no. Compared to her, I'm a gullible idiot. Because like, there's so many times where she'll be like,
Is that why you married her?
there are multiple times where like she'll say like, I got a bad feeling about this one, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Why would you even say that? And then give it a couple months, a couple years, whatever, like that person then ends up doing somebody close to us wrong or even ourselves wrong. And we're just like, and I'm like, how did you pick up on that? So I now know to never bet against any feeling she's had. There's even a feeling that she had against this one individual that I knew, an acquaintance of mine. And after just meeting him for like 2 minutes, she's like, I don't feel good around that guy. And I'm like, what's your deal?
I just said there's something wrong with him.
And now I'm not going to say that like, I've lost contact with him anyway, but I do wonder, what is it? What is it? Like, what is it about him that set off her spidey sense, so to speak?
What, do you? It's tricky, right? Because you also want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and you want to
Yeah.
believe in people.
And I'm sick of it.
Well,
Here's the thing that makes our relationship interesting is that I, through a good portion of our relationship, I was quite the pessimist. Surprising, I know. And
sure.
he was more optimistic. And so he always tried to see the best in people. He tried to give them another chance. And he's like, well, maybe they just said that because they're having a hard time or they didn't get enough sleep. And I'm sitting over here like, this guy, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on there?
And
It's like, no.
sure, quite often it does pay off to give the benefit of the doubt, but like there are many times where it really bites me in the ass, and I'm like, why did I have to see the better in people? Why do I have to think the world is capable of more than this?
You're not like that now, and I feel bad about it because I'm like, I hope I didn't contribute to that.
No, I don't think.
Keep
I think
keep thinking the best. Do it.
Do you think that your roles have switched a bit now? In that, Mike, you're more pessimistic and critical of people, and Brittany, you're more forgiving. Do you think you've taught each other that?
I would describe it less as a switch and more of a meeting in the middle.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah.
And it's funny because like even when we met, like we realized that in many ways our upbringing was kind of polar opposite. She was effectively raised by a single mom. I was effectively raised by a single dad. She had daddy issues. I had mommy issues. She was, while more pessimistic on her end and more optimistic on my end, I tended to be more blunt and even just rude at times, and she tended to be way overly sensitive at times. And so we've really had to she's learned to not be as sensitive to things. I've learned to be more sensitive to things. I've learned to not be so brutish about just being blunt or whatever. So yeah, it's more of a meeting in the middle, and it's very much for the better.
I said this to you previously before we started recording. I'm very I try not to be, but I'm a little bit jealous of you guys, and I think a lot of people would be jealous because
we get that
you match each other so well, and you probably gave each other what you needed both ways. And I think a lot of people would love to have had that from someone earlier. But I'm lucky that I get it now from my partner, but it wasn't always like that. And that loneliness and that struggle is difficult when it's just you. I'm very pleased that you guys had each other to carry each other through it. You know?
Oh, I would totally agree. He definitely helped me heal quite a bit, and I like to think that I helped him heal quite a bit too.
Absolutely.
And he's a very, very supportive person. Like almost too much sometimes. But he's like, whatever you need, or you can do it, just try it. I think it's the most support I've gotten from anyone ever, probably besides my own mother. So he's definitely helped me quite a bit.
And going back to that shame thing I've told you about, it's one of those things where, yes, we're together, we love each other, but she would fairly frequently have those bouts of that imposter syndrome of why basically not she wouldn't have these exact words into her head, but the emotions, the tangible emotions that would occur would convince her that she wasn't worthy of this support. She didn't understand what was going on. This is somebody who, kind of going a bit back to how people will blame themselves for things. I remember this one time she had quite a cry, wondering, about her bio dad, just crying out to, no one in particular, what's wrong with me? What is it he can't love about me? And, again, and it was coming from here, not from up here. And, and that's where, the healing was able to kind of help her come to a realization of, no, I do deserve to feel good. I deserve better than feeling like I'm disregarded. I can now recognize clearly that it's, him that's the issue. And, we really have helped each other with quite a bit of that. I'd say even more recently, one thing that's been helpful with, as I mentioned, with our couples counseling, a lot of one thing I love is how she has been able to be more assertive and sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but as she mentioned, I can be too supportive at times. And she asked me pretty bluntly, what is it that makes what you're doing different than some other controlling husband? You seem to think that what's better for me. Why does it make what you're doing okay? And I said, because you are feeling more empowered to call me out on my bullshit. I'm not holding you under my thumb. There's been a good couple times in the recent months or whatever where I did or said something that was out of line, and she's like, no more.
I think I said, you can't say that to me.
You can't say that to me. And I'm just kind of sitting there
and of course it didn't sass, eh?
Yeah. And of course it doesn't feel good in the moment, but when I after I stew in it for a little bit, and I'm like, oh fuck, she's right. Yeah.
And then you like it, and you're like, yeah, that was nice. And then you give me a look, and I'm like, oh, brother.
No, but that's the thing is that like, and like while it's cocky to say in those moments, I feel like I did know better. In a sense, I did, because again, like it was resulting in her becoming more empowered, more assertive, someone who was doing it for the the sake of being controlling wouldn't do it with the end result being, oh good, now you can put me in my place. you know
Well, but you also shouldn't be so hard on yourself, because when you grow up having to essentially, when you became a parent, you replaced your mother for your sisters. It's
in a
very
sense, yeah.
natural for you to want to be protective and nurturing and do things for a younger woman, someone who's a couple of years younger than you. I think it was just,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, a pattern that you were very, very used to.
Yeah, not to
Taking
mention,
care of everything.
not to mention that like I think at least 3 of the girls I dated in high school had abusive fathers or at least abusive parent figures, and so like when she just kind of point blank told me, yeah, I think it was what, the second night that we dated or something, or maybe the first night even, you're just like, by the way, like my dad's an abusive dickhead, and I'm like, okay.
No,
Like,
we had been, that was, it's more like 2.
well,
Because I was, well,
it
I
was,
was sick of the guys at that college. Because I was like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, quit standing me up and crap. I'm
Yeah.
tired of this dating crap.
yeah.
So I was just like, here's all the stuff. Leave or stay.
She was like, I'm going to be my most authentic self, and he's probably going to leave running. And I was just like, oh, okay. That
yeah,
sucks.
that's basically
Sorry.
verbatim. Okay. And I
like,
was like, huh?
And like, and as I mentioned, as I alluded to, again, this is where those things where it's like, there's what I thought at the time, and now here's where how I'm recontextualizing it because of, again, said faith transition. At the time, I very much thought that it was, the divine intervention preparing me for her. And while I don't necessarily think there was a, an invisible hand moving parts to do that, I definitely think it's undeniable that it absolutely did prepare me. Like, obviously, that's how experience works. You learn something in the past, and then you can use it in the present and future. So I was used to the idea of, oh, okay, another girl that's got a shitty dad. Got it. Been there.
I love that your type is damaged women,
right?
Not blondes or.
for a time, I thought
came out
my
really
type
badly. That was meant to be a funny joke, but damaged women is really offensive.
I think I said the same thing with her last night. I was like, I sure do got a type, don't I? And she's like, yeah. For a time, I thought I was going to marry somebody born in December, because my first 3 girlfriends were all born in December, and my birthday's in December, as is my mom's. One of those girlfriends actually shared my mom's birthday as well, so I was like, weird. Yeah, it's probably December. And then one was born in August and broke the mold. So,
Maybe you were going for a months that start with A thing. It was a trend.
December starts with D.
You said August, and I'm April.
Oh, the new trend you're saying. Got it. Yeah.
Also, surprise. You're welcome.
I'm trying to think where to segue next, because we've had. I wonder if we'll cut this in a different form, because we started talking about Britney's stuff, and then we went and talked about Mike's stuff, and now you've come back together.
Yeah. It's not real linear. Yeah.
Well, I don't. Well,
it's gonna take some editing.
Best of luck, man. I don't envy the time you're gonna spend in like Audacity or whatever you're using. So
yeah, he does all our editing, so I don't have to do it.
Shout out to Audacity. Maybe we, if you're down for it, I mean, we've been recording a couple of hours. We could talk individually another time, and Brittany, I could have you one-on-one, and Mike, I could have you one-on-one. But now that I've got you together,
excuse me,
I'm not sure how to take it forward. This is definitely going to get edited out.
See. Sure. No, that makes sense. I mean, we kind of talked a bit about like our professional and personal experience with it. I guess one last thing I can say that might help is that we are what is often referred to as wounded healers in our business. And that is when someone who's been through some really rough stuff, and then they come out the other end, and, they then feel the urge to, to go and help others with that. There's so many of us. And yeah.
Did you go into why you did it? Why you went into your work?
I mean, other than just saying it was with, mom trauma. I didn't really go into more detail than that, but.
I'm no trained professional, but I guess that's my motivation. It is my motivation. I don't want to see people go through what I went through. And I think
Yeah.
by talking about the things that we've been through, listeners or watchers will realize that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Narcissistic, abusive, physically abusive father for you, Brittany. Mike, you lost your mother when you were very young.
Yeah.
My story's a bit more close to Brittany,
Sure.
narcissistic, abusive mother and family. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find our way, but I think what unites the three of us is that we understand what it's like to hurt one way
Mm-hmm.
or another.
Yeah. And to feel
And
less than because of it.
Hmm.
yeah, man. I mean, I used to think I'm 35 now. We're all similar ages, 35, 36, 38. I haven't always been this way and I haven't always been this comfortable with who I am and what I've been through. And it does take time. I think people have got to recognize, or sorry, it would be good for people to hear that you don't need to be fixed and perfect straight away. It really does
Mm-hmm.
take time to heal. Um, I think back to who I was in my early 20s. I was a loner. I had no friends. I was full of anger. I had no social skills. I wasn't confident. I was afraid to go football or rugby training
Mm-hmm.
because I was afraid of people. And it took time for me to grow into my skin. I'm sure both of you can relate to that, right?
Oh, for
It does
sure.
take, yeah, it does take time.
I
It's
mean, I'm still working through stuff. It is a time-consuming and frustrating process because I had worked through a lot of it, but then I was like, oh, with certain things, I buried them. Like from when I was a little kid that had nothing to do with biodad, it was something else. I buried it and I was like, oh, that's not trauma. That's not trauma. And then when we went to couples therapy, she's like, trauma is the first thing I thought of when I saw you. And I was like, oh, damn it. And then
Bitch.
and then I know, right? I kind of had that in my, oh,
no, but
you.
we love her.
But she's amazing. Um, but then later on, I was like, yeah, I talked to Mike about this, but he said, I should bring it up here. And I did. And she's like, what are you talking about? Of course that's trauma. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah. She
I
didn't.
have another one. I'm not trying to be an overachiever when it comes to trauma, guys. I don't want another one to deal with. So then I was like, okay, well, we've covered all the trauma bases now.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is I kind of compare it to like when you're really digging in and like addressing trauma, grief, whatever it might be, it's like having to like go for like a surgery or something. It's not pleasant and you're probably going to like really spike how acute your pain and discomfort is at that time. But if all goes according to how it should, it's gonna subside, and then it's gonna end up being even less pain and less discomfort than it was before you underwent the whole procedure. You're very uncomfortable getting in there and digging stuff out, and this was some deep seated trauma that she had experienced because I mean we had been married 15 years at that point. She never gave me as much as a whisper about it, and it's not because she hid it from me. She didn't lie about it. She was not to me anyway. I mean, she was lying to herself. She was hiding it from herself. She was convincing herself, no, I don't have trauma because that thing that happened wasn't trauma. So bada boom, I don't have trauma there. So move on.
Not that one anyway.
Yeah.
Are you
Um,
are you ready to talk about that, or do we need time?
Oh, no,
Another
I can
time.
talk about it now. So basically, what happened was when I don't even remember what age for certain that I was. I know I was pretty little because I had this babysitter I would go to because my mom worked, bio dad worked. So I would go there in the summer and then when it was the school year after school. So I'd get off the bus there. Um, and nothing was wrong with the babysitter. But there were kids there, and we would play together. But I was still like the uncool one, we can say. Like they were like the clique. Um, and I was the uncool one. So whenever we'd play, I had to be this Power Ranger because it was the least cool one. I had to be this Ninja Turtle because nobody wanted to be that one. Oh no, I didn't get to be a Ninja Turtle. I was oh my gosh, what's that one monster's name?
Bebop, Rocksteady.
Yeah, I had to be that because I wasn't cool enough to be a Ninja Turtle. And I'm like, but I'm so Michelangelo. Anyway, I love pizza. But anyway, and that's like the lighthearted part. The darker story was, and I don't know, something could have happened to some of those kids, but they came one day and it was a brother and a sister, and one of them was the same age as me, and the sister was a little bit older, and then there was another little girl that was like a year younger than all of like me and this boy. Not that it matters, but we were all really little. And I don't know if something happened at the siblings' house or what. One day they came, she stripped him down, and they were like, we're going to play a game or whatever. And they made me do things with them and did things to me, and then basically violated me, and then also critiqued me and said that I was ugly and I didn't do any of it right, and of course I didn't like it because blah blah blah. And this went on for quite a while. Whenever the babysitter was in a different part of the house, it would happen. And it was repeatedly until I got to stop going there because I was old enough that my mom's like, okay, we can give you a key. You can just go home after school on your own. But for the longest time, like I would have nightmares about it. I would feel uncomfortable in my own skin. I didn't want people to touch me at all. Mm-hmm. Besides my mom, she was like the one person where I was like, yeah, you're safe. Because you got to remember, at home, I had violent touch. There, I had another kind of violating touch that I didn't understand because I was little.
You don't understand sex at that age, do you?
Right, no. And so there was a lot of shame. I can label it as that way now because I'm an adult and I understand it better. But there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of just, what is this? And like with a lot of, survivors of assault, molestation, sexual abuse, you think, oh, well, every once in a while it feels good. So I'm a participant. I must have been aware and liked it and wanted it somehow. So, I'm a part of this. Like I am wrong somehow. So there was that element to it too. And so for the longest time, I was like, well, like once I got old enough, I was like, nah, that's not trauma. It's not trauma because it was other kids. And, other kids would, tell you eventually like, oh yeah, that time when my cousin and I touched butts, we put on our pants to see what our butts looked like. And we touched them and, it's just like kid stuff.
Little kid playground stuff.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, okay, it's not trauma because, you guys did that. And maybe it's like similar, or it's not trauma because it wasn't an adult. An adult didn't do it to me. So it wasn't. And so one day...
You invalidated yourself, maybe?
Yes. So one day I was talking to a client and I'm like, oh, this is not good. This sounds very similar to this thing that I have nightmares about. And I was like, and it got my wheels turning. And I started having the nightmares every night again because they would be kind of infrequent. So then he was in the kitchen. I think he was making dinner or something. And I was like, hey.
No, we actually just got home from a couple session.
Okay. Well, I turned to him.
We were in the kitchen though. You're right.
I timidly came up to him and I was like, hey, let me ask you a question. And I posed it to him in such a way that he probably thought it was like a client thing, because sometimes we'll bounce things off of each other, like, what would you do in this situation? Like, what kind of therapy would you use? And so I kind of posed it that way. I was like, hey, so random question. If you had somebody that came to you and this is the scenario, is that trauma? and he turned to me, and I think his wheels were turning, but
because your tone was not nearly as suave as you're making it right now.
Right.
It was clear it was so emotionally charged. It was different
Yeah,
than
so
our usual work talks.
he's got a certain facial expression, certain body language. So I'm like, his wheels are turning, crap. And then he's like, well, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's
Like
definitely
I
trauma.
wasn't sure how to answer the question, not because it didn't, not because the answer itself eluded me, but again, I was just wondering, like, why this
Why is
question?
this
Why
coming
now?
up?
Why
You
in this
knew it was
tone?
about her, really.
Yeah, because it wasn't like I knew I mean I think I suspected it. I can't say I knew, but I knew it wasn't like she said, like maybe I could have passed it off as her doing a client consult type of thing with me, just
Yeah.
kind of talking shop. But she didn't stop and preface it like we normally would to say, "Hey, I got an issue I want to run by you." Like that's usually how we.
Yeah.
But she didn't do any of that. She just kind of out of nowhere said, "So if a kid does this to another kid, is that trauma?" And I'm just, yeah, yeah. Why? Of course it would be. And then you just kind of had a bit of a breakdown there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how that went. And you're like,
Yeah.
we should talk about this in therapy.
Next week, I think I might have made a little chuckle remark where it's just like, "Oh crap, we just got done seeing Becky. We need to go see her again."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think he was probably a little confused because I had told him about other instances where I had been harassed or assaulted. And so the question became like, why
Yeah.
didn't we talk about this sooner? Like, what is
Yeah.
it about this that,
But it was not. I don't know if I asked that, but I know if I did, it definitely was not in an accusatory.
no, no, no,
How could you hold this back for 15 years? It was coming from a place of like,
no.
wow, like you really felt the need to have to wait 15 years to do this, like legitimately, that's how, again, like not only as her husband, but also as someone with the professional training to recognize there was something block that got knocked loose just recently, to have this all happen. Like I said, like not a whisper of anything like this having happened. I mean, she told me about the Power Ranger and the Ninja Turtle stuff, but she didn't go into any of the other stuff because, like I told you, shame is a sneaky son of a bitch that like it makes us feel like we don't deserve better, but does it in such a way that it makes sense to us in our weakened state.
well, she
Yeah.
doesn't want you to think less of her either, right? Because she
Yeah.
loves you. And
Well, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of layers to trauma. Not only that, but each separate trauma. There's a lot of layers to peel back on each one. Like, see, now I can talk to him and say like, "Oh, don't do that. I feel trapped. I feel
Yes.
trapped when you do that physically with me. So
Yeah.
we need to do something
Yeah.
different."
Whereas previously it would just be like basically accusing me of
I
being an
would just freak
asshole.
out. I would
Yeah.
freak out.
Yeah. Without, I don't want to get too candid about it, but yeah, like our wedding night, for example, did not go the way we planned on it because she was basically like, just because of simply trying to enjoy myself. And again, keep in mind, we were raised Mormon. This was a big deal to us, the wedding night here. And like, I think I had a smile on my face and she was just like, "I can't believe you're smiling." Like, and we can laugh about it now, but at the time I was just like, "What the heck?" Like, I'm sorry. Like, am like this is wrong for me to like get some enjoyment out of this? And so,
but
yeah,
also
we can laugh about it now.
sex at 20 or 21 is very different to sex at 35, right? You're so inexperienced
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
that age that,
Yeah.
and you also probably
Yeah.
didn't know each other as well. You'd only been together like a year and a half at that point.
Oh, 6 months we were together,
6 months.
and that's
6 months to a year.
and that's another thing I was even telling her just last night. I was like, like we really lucked out because we, like, the more that we are going through, the faith transition and everything, especially me in particular, like, the more I see clients in this area that are going through it, like the more that we see so many instances of people who just leapt into marriage with really not much of an understanding of what the consequences were going to be. They sure thought they knew them, and we sure thought we knew them too. But it's like, good thing we had more going for us than just a mutual respect for God and a mutual horniness that we because like there was, I mean, I guess it sounds silly to say, maybe, I don't know, but the point is, like, we really like and love each other now, or and that's the thing, like it's the domino effect that has occurred over the past 3 years or so. I'm very grateful for. Like, even though we really were in the shits quite a bit there, like our communication and our vulnerability and our closeness is better than it has been at any point prior in the 16 years that we've been together, and that's fantastic. So I really feel like we lucked out that it's like, oh good, I picked someone that doesn't suck to be around.
You can grow with.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Before we move away very quickly, Brittany, I just
Sure.
want to say thank you for your bravery in speaking up about that. It takes a lot.
Yeah.
I just wanted to acknowledge that quickly because we skipped past the chance to do that. So thank you.
Sure. Well, and we have to do this. Like, and like, even though I was even sharing, even though I didn't go into much detail, even though it's not, usually a comfortable thing to do. It's kind of a taboo thing to talk about, sex and whatnot. Like, the thing that we've learned, and this is the key. Like I said, the more you own up to it, the more control you take back for yourself, the more you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the easier it becomes, and the more strength you have. If you are familiar at all with the writings of Brene Brown, she has done, tremendous breakthroughs in shame and vulnerability, and the basically showing that, like, the paradox is that many of us think that if I show a vulnerability there, then I am, by its own definition, I'm showing a weakness, and it's going to be used against me. And while, yes, in some cases somebody can,
sometimes it is,
and sometimes it is the case, but the act itself of being vulnerable is one that actually, while it feels like it would incur, that it would make that that it would bring you into a state of being more weak. The opposite is true. The more you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the more strong you are. The more you, for example, allow yourself to have a good cry on your own terms, the stronger you are, because you're not now holding this emotional, burdensome weight inside of you.
I mean, sexual abuse is a topic I didn't think we'd get to so quickly. But
surprise!
Yeah,
I wasn't lying when I said I've got him. I'm an overachiever of trauma.
Just
you want it, I got it.
Just try to one up her. I dare you.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean the different types.
Sure.
I'm covering it.
Two different tangents. Ooh, yeah. I was going to say that I was raised. I don't have any memories before I was 4. And I had my godmother, and she had a very strange relationship where she lived with 2 men separately and had 2 separate bedrooms. And I don't have any memory of being in her house other than the dog sticker in the window. There was a window of her front door. There was a charity sticker of this green dog, RSPCA, or Protection of Animals or something. And my whole life I was terrified of dogs. I was terrified of being at her house and the association of being at her house and seeing dogs. And I always wonder if I was abused in some way, but I have no memory of it. I don't really know where I'm going with it. Being in her house, I had the top of my finger cut off in a door.
Ouch.
I think I was maybe between 18 months and 2 years old. So my finger is wonky where it's not straight on one side. But then I also have this odd feeling that maybe something happened to me there. Because, when you just know something not quite right.
Mm-hmm. Like a dream you're trying to remember?
Well, maybe, yeah. And I don't... I'm not afraid of it. I've got to the point where I accept that maybe something happened, but I don't have any relation, unfortunately, to you and what you said, other than I think there's something there. Don't know. I guess just trying to relate to you in some way. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry you went through that. I'm sure there are a lot of other people who've been through it as well.
At the risk of becoming more clinically minded again,
go on, please.
Yeah, if you, I don't know, because again, what can I say? Like, I never quite ditched the whole problem solving mentality. So I hear you say, I've got this thing that I think is kind of gnawing at me, but I'm not quite sure. So now I'm wanting to throw suggestions out for possible I think so. Have you?
Go for it, because I'm unafraid of
Sure.
being treated on
Yeah.
camera or diagnosed, and there are
So,
probably people
so this,
who would like to hear. So go for it.
yeah.
Or
So
use
with
me as
that,
a
so
ragdoll.
one thing that immediately comes to mind, one modality that I'm trained in. Are you familiar with something called EMDR?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
What?
explain what EMDR is, in case
Okay.
people
So
don't.
it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I know it's a mouthful. That's why we have a lot of initials for everything.
Yeah.
It's not as fancy as it sounds. Um, Basically, you use some kind of bilateral stimulation. So, in the name, eye movements. So, you'd watch a ball back and forth on a screen or a light on a bar, or sometimes we hold up our fingers and we'll do this. Or if it's a child, you'll have like little puppets on your fingers and they follow those with their eyes just because it's easier and more fun
Yeah.
for them. And what we do is we look back at memories that may be obviously to do with whatever the trauma or issue that someone's dealing with, that they may have something to connect to that, or something might come up and somebody's like, I don't know how this memory connects. But when we were talking about body sensations and emotions, I just thought of this time where I had a blue bedspread as a gift, and it was a happy thing. So I don't know why this is coming up, and I'm like, let's just see, let's just explore it. And so we'll do the movements. They'll think about the memory, and sometimes they'll remember something that they had forgotten or blocked, although that tends to be more rare. And kind of process through it and make it less burdensome to remember is basically
Yeah.
the short and dirty version.
And to go even further with it, so like the theory behind how it works is that by having your, as she said, there's different types of bilateral stimulation. The main three are tactile, meaning touch, audio, so you'd have them wearing headphones or some other sound, and then visual, which with the eye movement one. And while they're all effective, generally the most effective is the eye movement one, and it's because with the eyes moving back and forth, left to right, it mimics the eye movements that occurred during the REM sleep cycle, during the rapid eye movement sleep cycle.
Like if you've ever seen somebody falling asleep, if you watch, sometimes their eyes will move underneath their eyelids.
Yeah.
It's that time when you're like going through your day, right before you're under.
Well, it's when, and it's during that time, during the REM sleep cycle is when the brain is dreaming. And dreams, among other things, are, opportunity for the brain to try to process and make sense of all the information it's gathered in the past day or so. So basically, we are utilizing, eye movements and other bilateral stimulation as a means of accessing that, unusual, I don't know if unusual is the right word, but that otherwise inaccessible processing capability while fully awake. And for some people, it's more effective than even just plain talking about it. So, for example, they might be thinking of a time where they were scared of something, and as they're reliving it, as they're not reliving it, but as they're kind of replaying it in their mind, recalling it, like they might feel a tightness in their chest. And ideally, if everything's going according to plan, which it more often than not does, we'll be applying the stimulation to them, and as it's going, that tightness loosens up more and more. And it's not voodoo or anything. All that's really happening is just giving them a chance to feel the emotion of what they were supposed to feel, which kind of goes right back to everything we were talking about, how the problem isn't when bad, scary, events happen to us. The problem is when we don't give ourselves a chance to feel them in a proper way, be it because of, pushing grief down, or convincing yourself it's not trauma, or like a war veteran who loses a comrade, but he can't grieve because there's still bullets whizzing by his face. Or a common one that I work with, if I work with youth that have come from abusive households, they're not able to feel those things that happen because they know that any show of emotion will likely result in some kind of conflict with family members, their siblings, parental figures, what have you. So that's the EMDR in a nutshell. And the reason I bring it up in your instance is that it's something that may be effective, because I recall this one time I was able to use it with this one young girl who, believe it or not, is worse than both of your guys' abusive parents put together. And she, at this facility we were working at, like, here's how bad he is. He is so bad that after the divorce, the judge put into effect a lifetime restraining order. So he has no contact with the mom and this daughter. Like I've rarely heard of such a thing happening. So that's anyway.
It was serious.
At this facility we were in, it was a residential facility. So she lived there and received treatment, and she was under my clinical care. And hygiene was an issue with her because she would always get into these panic attacks whenever it was time to take a shower. And when I had a talk with her about it, what she told me was, I don't know what happened, but I know something happened. Sure. And I know what was happened. I know what happened in the shower, and I know it was Biodad's doing, but I don't know what he did. But it was something. And so what we had to work with was basically the emotion of I basically told her, like, okay, well, let's after I did quite a bit of prep work, of course, making sure that she's safe and grounded, and minimize the likelihood of any kind of dangerous flashback episode happening. What I had her do was just imagine herself going into the shower here at the facility, taking a shower. How does that make you feel? And she's able to notice, like, okay, my heart rate's going up, my arms are clenching. She's able to notice all the ways that her body's reacting to it. I applied the stimulation as needed. Or rather, I got a little ahead of myself. Then I had her think of an image, conjure an image of herself. She didn't tell me what the image was, and I didn't need to know. So think of an image that in your mind's eye represents these emotions and these sensations that you're experiencing. So she had that as kind of a visual anchor of sorts, even though it wasn't, as far as we know, from an actual memory, although it possibly could have been. Applied the stimulation, and after a couple of sessions of that, she was able to later that week start taking showers again without going into full-blown panics. Because the reason why I bring that up and why it was so helpful is because, sure, talking about things is generally a pretty tried and true way of being able to address an issue and let yourself feel it. But how can she talk about what she literally has no memory of? So we were able to kind of access like a back channel of sorts to help her address that. So.
Well, and I work with, that's like the majority of my clientele is people that have, survived trauma. And what I found is a lot of them, they don't want to rehash it. They don't want to talk about it all over again because it is like reliving it. So when you use something like that, like EMDR as therapy for them, they don't have to. They don't have to exhaustively talk about it. You're just saying, I just want you to watch it as if you're at a drive-in movie theater or it's passing you by, you're on a train. Don't relive it, just like you're an outside observer, and just look and just, what do you notice? And then sometimes I had this one, she only spoke in colors when we would do it. What'd you notice? Blue. Okay.
Interesting.
Let's keep going. What do you notice now? It's darker blue. Okay. Let's keep going. And it's getting green now. I had no idea. I had no idea what was going on in her head. But by the end, we got to white. And that was good. And that's all I needed to know. So that one was good to go. So you don't have to exhaustively talk about it. I don't have to understand anything that they're saying. As long as by the end, they're feeling like it's neutral or just down to such a low number that it's not going to be so burdensome, and get it to where they can go from saying, I'm an absolute garbage can of a human being, to saying, I can have good days and bad days, or I'm a failure, to I tried my best.
At the very least, I hope it gives anyone who's listening the chance to recognize that it's safe to go to therapy, or that maybe it might help them.
I think a lot of people are scared of it. I'll have people come in and I'm like, have you been to therapy before? And someone will be like, no. And their eyes will get big and they'll start, you can tell when somebody's feeling anxious. And so I'll just I'm like, okay, tell me if you need breaks. Do you want to drink a water right now? You can tell me as much or as little as you want, because I know this is weird. I'm a stranger. You don't have to tell me anything if you don't want. We can just sit here and talk about the things that you like until you're comfortable, and I just try to meet them where they are. And then by the end, I'll say, like, am I still scary? And they'll be like, no. And they'll start laughing because I'm not, because I've had one person throughout the years of work that has called me intimidating. And when that's like an icebreaker. So I'll like tell people right after they meet me first session, and I'll be like, I've been told I've intimidated, and they'll just laugh. One of them fell on the floor just right off of the chair in my office they were sitting in, laughing so hard. And I was like, well, you feel better now, don't you? Because it's funny because I don't see it and nobody else does. Like my friends will laugh hysterically about that to this day. Like, yeah, remember that time I was told I was intimidating? My friend Sam will lose it, like snorting and everything. And I'm like, it doesn't bother me.
I bet you have.
It's like,
I wonder if you have that switch in you where you need to be the tough girl, you need to stand up to someone, or you need to get into a fight, and that complete switch.
So there are times. So like people in my office, they're like, you don't get mad, you don't get angry. And I'm like, oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. One example is my son. Anybody comes after my son, I go into full mama bear mode and I'm like, you want a piece of me? Like I'm pretty scrappy. Like I'll take you on. Like there was this one time in the grocery store, I think he was crying because he wanted candy or something. Because I don't know how it is out there, but you have like candy when you're checking out, like right by the checkout line.
Impulse
So
buys.
he's like, yes. So he's like, he's crying. He's just like a toddler at this point. And I'm like, nope, I'm not doing it because I know what's going to happen next time we come in. It's not happening. If you behave well, you can have a treat next time we come in, not from there, but like a Lunchable or something. But this lady was like, exactly behind me or two people behind me. And I heard her say, what a horrible child. She must be a bad mom and all this stuff. And I just turned around and I looked at her. And it was a look of, keep talking, see what happens. Because, like, I'm not a fighter. I'm never going to punch somebody. I'm not going to put my hands on anybody. But verbally, I will give you the smackdown of a lifetime because I learned from the best. Like, I can talk to somebody for 5 minutes and I will know exactly how to cut you and where. So, like, don't mess with me. I only use my powers for good. Mike knows.
Yeah.
So like there are times where I can be that way. I can be really assertive and just be like, no, we're not doing this. Or like, what's really bothering you because you're not talking to me like that, kind of a thing. So it's interesting. I have all sides. You should see me watching an MMA match. Then you'll see the bloodthirsty side and be like, make them bleed. Like, take her down. He knows.
It's a hoot.
He enjoys it.
I wanted to make one quick point, but I've got to go back when we were talking about EMDR and my lack of memory. Now I sound like I'm making it all about me. I'm really sorry.
No, it's your podcast, man.
It's our podcast at this point.
But also I did bring it up because like I saw that you had that issue and I thought, you know what, I'm going to urge him to pursue EMDR because maybe it can help even if you don't have memory of it.
I mean, I'm not trained in it, but hypnosis could also help. It doesn't work for everybody. Like you have to be.
I'm not trained in it, so I
can't think of the word.
This was the point I was trying to make, though, that if there are people like. I wonder if some stuff went on and I'm not afraid to confront it. And in fact, maybe that's even a good episode to record is me having that treatment and so other people can see what it's like. But maybe for people who do wonder if something happened or they think something happened or they know something happened, you can go after EMDR or you can go after hypnosis therapy if it might help you, is my point. And it's something I'm unafraid of trying. Maybe I should go for it myself. Thank you for the advice, I guess.
Yeah.
Good job.
Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stop the recording quickly.